Well, hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Adventures Travel Club television show. Betty, we find ourselves back here in Ephesus, and we are at Hadrian's Temple. They say that this is probably some of the most beautiful areas of the ruins that were left here.
I would think so, and the carvings themselves are so exquisite. And to have been able to do that in that long ago, and to have it be so beautiful.
They said on some of the detail work there that they thought that there were bronze statues that stood on top of some of the pillars, and it was thought also that at one time that this was a statue of Medusa, but they think now that it wasn't. That it was just.
I didn't see any snakes in her hair.
I didn't look that closely.
Well, from what we could see.
Well,
this is the fun thing.
Yeah, here we go. We're going to the latrine, folks, and this, as you can see, was a communal situation. In fact, they sat fairly close together, and of course there was running water under here, and people came here to sit and visit and do their gossiping, right?
They did, and some business was taken care of there also. But, we laugh about it, and we think it's really funny, but just think how sophisticated that was.
Well, I think that perhaps, people were not quite as modest as we are today,
No.
and this particular area anyway.
I would say we have close quarters there, wouldn't you? That was picture taking only.
Oh, is that right?
That's right.
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh, no, Lila decided to join us there.
But you see how big this was. Look, it goes all the way around.
What's the matter? Tina's too bashful. She wouldn't sit there and join us.
Oh, well.
To each his own, huh?
That's right. Yeah, but look, those little seats there were rather close together, weren't they?
They were. They would more for thin people than for broad people. But we had a ball doing it. It was just fun.
Maybe there were thinner people in Ephesus during those days.
You think of kids giggling, but I don't know. There was an awful lot of it going on with our matronly group. We just had a good time.
I think so. Now we're getting a little better shot here, as you can see from a distance, how big this must have been. And we have to remember, too, that the sanitation was pretty good there. They had a lot of running water, and the running water went down into a sewer system that was right on the main roads there throughout Ephesus during that time.
And Marva, I think this was roofed over, too, wasn't it? Weren't all these buildings at one time roofed over? So you didn't sit there in the rain.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so
and
at all.
Marble, all filled with marble, yes.
And now we're going to get on one of the main streets here, and oh, look, there's a cute little puppy dog. Isn't that cute?
Yeah, I don't know how it got there. Do you? We didn't see any people living around that area, but evidently they are.
Well, I think some of the workers might.
Yeah.
Betty, as we travel down this road, we see a couple of gates here that were built actually by slaves. And they did that and dedicated them to the Emperor Augustus because he gave them their freedom. And evidently these slaves had a lot of money, and they were the ones that donated the money to have these gates built. When we see gates, we're talking about archways, and it's kind of hard to depict exactly where all of these are because so many of these seem to kind of run together. But now we're going to go over to the library, and this building, well, they put it back together again. As we can see, it's really interesting.
When you look at the facade, you see it's a two-story structure. But the inner side of it, as you can see the brick walls over there, it was a three-story structure. There were shelves, but it was not open stack or open system as we have today. There was the library and all that. So all of these are made, the books and the scrolls are made of what? Papyrus. And where from? Egypt.
Well, we know about papyrus from Egypt, don't we, Betty?
Yeah, we brought some back with us and had a lot of fun with it. It was a good thing for us, for our television viewers.
All right. And look at Tina and John. They were standing there just really posing in front of the Library of Celsus and the Monumental Tomb. You know, this library was probably the third largest in the world at that time after Alexandria and Pergamon. And, I mean, it stood for a long, long time. However, the Goths burned it down, and there were hundreds of thousands of books in there, or scrolls, on papyrus, and that was all destroyed.
I always wonder, how do you burn down marble?
Well, you don't. The marble stayed, but the papyrus burned, right?
And
yeah.
insides, of course, but the walls would have been marble.
Well, then there was an earthquake that later on destroyed it. Yeah, and it was put back together again. But then it was used as more as a fountain instead of the library.
But when you said that many books, It's just boggles your mind because these aren't books like we know today, where you have a printing press and you have the binding and all of that.
All done by hand.
All done by hand, and then papyrus, not just
Scrolls.
Yeah.
So you can think of the man hours that went into that when they said they had hundreds of thousands of scrolls or books that were in this particular library. I mean that boggles your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then to think to destroy something like that. You can see maybe destroying a building out of viciousness, but books.
Well, when you have ignorant invaders, they do. Well, it happened.
We do it today.
Right, it's happened time and time again.
Of course.
Anyway, we're going to move on down. You had been here to Ephesus before, and you said, "Boy, just wait till you get to Ephesus." And I thought, yeah, okay.
There she goes again.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I mean, this was incredible, absolutely, and it still is incredible. And the other thing that makes it more incredible is that they're not just letting it be just as it is. They are still doing more excavations on this, and this is the thing that is so exciting, I think, because you're going to be able to year after year see more and more of this city put back together again.
I wish the movies would do something about Ephesus. They could do the original, because they can do all that with the facades and stuff.
Computer animation and all that.
Wouldn't that be something
that
to
would
see?
Be.
Yes.
Yeah. Why don't you raise some money and we'll make a movie?
Sure, and we're trying to do it for Channel 49.
Speaking about
Ephesus.
That, yeah. And on our next trip, we need $4,000, folks, because we need a new camera for our next trip.
Yeah,
and
Mark says he's not going to do it again.
I've had 2 hernia operations. I'll tell you, I have these great big cameras. So that's
of course, he looks for sympathy.
Yeah, let's look for something very exciting right here, as Mehmet explained.
No.
This is the sign, a commercial advertisement, if you want to put it that way, showing the way to the house of pleasure for the strangers or for the first timers, those who come to the town for the first time. Because down this street you turn left to the harbor street, and that's the harbor over there. And behind me, facing you, is the agora or the marketplace. So if you're coming here, let's say for the first time, they always tell you, go up to the theater, and that's down there. Turn right from the theater to the marble street. You will find a footprint over there. Just follow the footprint, the arrow, it will take you to that house. That means the left footprint is interpreted as the house being on the left side of the street, which is true. And then you see this sign here, like in the shape of a cross, and the left-hand side is slightly longer. So that means you go up to the intersection of the street, you turn left into the building over there. And there's this heart with lots of dots in it. So it's the girls over there with lots of clients in heart and in mind, waiting eagerly to take their money, I suppose. And she is represented like Artemis or Diana with a crown, so she must be the most beautiful woman over there.
Well, while they're looking at the advertisement, we're going to look at the sewer.
Yeah, good testing on us, really. I can't believe you do that.
And this was, we see the grate there, and that's the sewer running right down through the middle of the street, yeah. So, and we have to remember that there was hot water and there was cold water that was running throughout the city.
Very sophisticated.
Yeah, it really was. And there are still, as we can see, some of these reliefs that are still here on this street. And as I said just a moment ago, I think it will be so interesting to see as they continue to do more excavations here. But we should also explain that some of the original pieces that were found here in the early excavations are in some of the museums in other countries throughout the world. So some of the pieces, of course, that we will see, or that we have seen too, are reproductions, and where the original, especially the marble statuary, that type of thing, that they took in when they went in here originally, and then they took those to museums all over the world.
Hey, why did Dale and what's his name? Roland, why did they put their hands in the holes?
I don't know. I don't know. Dale says, I think you can tie up your camel or your girlfriend here. I'm not sure.
Oh, come on.
I don't know what that was for. Maybe that's what it was for, to tie up the animals. I don't know. But I wasn't there, so I couldn't say.
I didn't know whether they were reaching through to shake hands or.
Yeah, well, it was a hole that was carved right through there. Who knows though? Some of that may have been covered over with marble. Maybe something was there to anchor the marble down too.
Okay, whatever.
Now look at this.
Yeah.
the largest amphitheater in the world outside of the Colosseum in Rome. Isn't this magnificent?
When I saw it the first time, my mouth kind of opened up. It just because it's it's so big.
It is. It is. That's why it's called the Grand Theater, I suspect.
And the acoustics in it are fantastic. I stood down there by one of the posts, one of the columns there, and by whispering, just whispering, my voice went all the way back up to the very, very top, and surrounding areas it could be heard.
The world's first surround sound system.
That's right, and that's where St. Paul did his preaching.
Yeah.
And gosh, he was mean to the pagans and really gave them heck.
Right over here, you see a gentleman seated there. Just behind him, up the middle section, the brown area is like the original seats carved out of the rock. And later on, in Roman times, of course, it was all covered by marble slabs and all that. It went under so many eras, periods, and changes, of course. You hardly see marble nowadays. The auditorium leans against the rock, therefore it gives it a Greek feature. Then the stage, where you see these pillars, 2 rows of pillars, where Betty was singing or just talking to us a short while ago. And then the stage building behind, where the tripod is. This is all a later edition, Roman edition. In Greek times, a theater is a place that you educate, you enlighten the people.
So that was interesting, Betty. The Greeks educated and the Romans entertained in this particular amphitheater. And then when the Romans came along, as he said, too, they put marble on the seats. I guess they wanted a little more plush.
A little more elegant, sure, why not?
I
And
think
and
so.
it's available. It was available.
Yeah, it was. That's
yes,
true.
so-
The auditorium is in 3 stages, or in 3 levels, the upper, middle, and lower part with these horizontal separations. And you have 2 arches over there to the left, and there used to be 2 more on the right-hand side. So apart from the one that we used to enter for and to sit down in this lower part, you could take the steps, of course, the staircase from outside to the middle or the upper auditorium. And this used to house 24 to 25,000 people. The largest theater of antiquity, no comparison. Anything bigger than this is the Colosseum, which is architectural different. It's a round building, as you know. So, as far as antiquity and the theaters of antiquity are concerned, nothing in Greece or anything like that. It's all over here, 24 to...
What we're looking at now is the tower where St. Paul perhaps was kept during his time here.
Under custody, if you want to put it that way, for a while, when because he sort of misbehaved himself, he caused some trouble over here, and they say during that time he's put in that little castle. Can you see way out there, straight ahead of you on the hilltop? That's also a watchtower, of course, because to the left of it and behind is the sea, open sea, and then in the foreground, in the past, it was the harbor of Ephesus, all these brown fields, etc. So they say he was put up there for a while until he was released, and then he continued his journey. I don't know which one. We mentioned both of them. I think both make sense anyhow, as far as the journey is concerned. The only thing we know is on the way back, of course, he couldn't sail in Ephesus because of the winds. From Assos, on the way to Jerusalem, he went further south to Miletus, where he called the elderly people of Ephesus for a farewell party or gathering, so to speak, as he never came back home.
Didn't he scold the silver makers? Didn't he preach from this area right here and scolded them? Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's why
when
they
got
protested him.
Yeah.
Great is Artemis, what you say is all lie and all that, And finally, the Harbor Street, again flanked by 1 row of columns on both sides. Can you see one column is taller than the rest?
Yes.
Now, there used to be 4 of them in the Byzantine period, and there used to be the head busts, the head statues of 4 of the saints. Whom are they? Matthew, Mark,
and
John, and Luke on top of that. But of course, it's only 1 column, and the statues are gone. They are not preserved. They are destroyed, of course. Then about this city, imagine that St. Paul came in here. The merchants came in and out through the sea. They reached the shores of Ephesus over here. Anthony or Antonius with Cleopatra, they came down to Ephesus again through the same street. And like Pompeii in Italy, which is, destroyed as a result of this volcanic eruption. Pompeii in antiquity, as well as this very street of Ephesus, the harbor street, was illuminated at night by special lanterns hanging from those capitals of the pillars. Just I leave it to your imagination how great it used to look, I think, during those days. And I think maybe to revive the same idea, we still use the theater for theatrical performances, concerts, and all that.
So the concert area is still used, or I guess the amphitheater, right, for concerts, for special shows, even today. That's amazing that that they're still using it. But the most amazing thing is that Harbor Street was lit at night.
Marv, I feel that this is a real humbling experience that we went through, to think this magnificent culture, all of this building that took place, and look at it today. There but for the grace of God.
Yeah. Well, I like we've said so many times before, probably the civilizations that we're living in today won't even have this as far as the remnants, a few thousand years afterwards. I don't know. But it is so great to see that these people from all over the world are contributing to have the excavations done and to have this part of Ephesus, reconstructed, or really re-put together again. And as we stated, a lot of the statues, marble statues, are in museums all over the world. We're going to leave Ephesus 1. That's just where we were. Ephesus had 4 different places in its time. And we're going to stop for a little break, a little tea break, and also to have a little fashion show as we're going to continue on to see more of Ephesus. But we stopped to have some tea, and we stopped at this place where they specialize in leather. And we see that the leather jackets that the women and that the men have were really very, very fashionable and very, very nice, but they're a little bit beyond my price range.
Oh my goodness, they were so expensive. It just seems sort of incongruous to see a fashion show amidst of all of the things that we have just witnessed, but it's sort of a light touch.
Oh yeah, and it was nice so that we could have a little break for to have some tea, as we see right here. What I like, it seemed like so many people did like, was the apple tea that was. I brought some of that back.
Yeah, you were always bragging about that. I don't know.
It's
You
good.
you could have had my share of it. It was okay.
Were you going to stick with coffee?
Well, no, I don't know what I stick with. I bring my own little bottle of water.
Well, just as long as we have some sort of refreshments, but I still do like the apple tea. Well, we're going to go now and finish the fashion show and go on to more of Ephesus up on the hill.
Changes, but it's still there. Earlier temple, then this, 5th century, 3rd century temple, and what happens afterwards? They just move the columns up there for the construction of St. John, the Church of St. John, to the right of the citadel. Most of them being taken up there in 6th century AD, when Justinian the Great came.
Well, this is quite a sight from here. We can see the gates there off in the distance that we're going to go up to in just a little bit. But we see where the old temples were here. But as you look up on the top of the hillside, you can see a little bit of the Church of St. John there. And there's more edifices, as we should say, that are up there too. And as we go up, we're going to bypass some other buildings as we travel up that road.
Of course, they did not look like this at all. It was a magnificent temple. A Turkish bath. So where you have the holes, they used to place the glass over there for some light, natural illumination, and also the steam, going out through the openings in the glass. And what is left on the side, as you can see, is collected and used for the construction of this mosque at the very final stage, 1375. You still have some pillars in the courtyard of this mosque with some capitals, as well as all these things you see for the Temple of St. John. After the pagan world came to an end, they were more interested in their churches, naturally, than preserving the temple. They are all sort of moved to this side. The Church of St. John is just walking up this slope on your left-hand side, a few steps up, and then we see the interior of the church, the apse and all that, the burial place, the grave of St. John.
Betty, what's the significance of this persecution gate here?
Well, it's really, I don't it's know for sure, but during the Byzantine era, this gate served the fourth city of Ephesus as its south gate. And it was named Persecution because Achilles was chasing Hector during the Trojan War, and so I guess they figured they were being persecuted and named it Persecution Gate.
Evidently. Well, what we can see here now, as we said, that there was Ephesus 1, Ephesus 2, Ephesus 3, and Ephesus 4. So that kind of explains if this was the south gate here. And we see that the restoration of both the Church of St. Mary and the Basilica of St. John was sponsored by the Ministry of Culture and the Quatman Foundation out of Lima, Ohio.
It's a sketch or a diagram over here, giving us some information about where we are and the general layout of the area. Here's the railroad, as you can see. This is where we are now, Ayasoluk hilltop, and it is numbered like Ephesus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the way I am standing now is to my right is the fields, which opens up to the sea, which is right over here.
Well, as we can see, looking out over here to the right-hand side, we could, if it were a clear day, we could see out to the sea. It wasn't quite that clear, but you sure got a good viewpoint from up here too. This was really interesting, Betty, because this was a basilica. It wasn't just a church; it was a basilica, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it started out as a little church, Marv. It was a really tiny chapel that was built over the grave of St. John, and then from then on, the Byzantine Emperor Justinius and his wife Theodora built the basilica that you see. It's in the shape of a cross, and it's 40 by 110 meters. So that's a pretty big size, yeah. So this was one of the most famous pilgrimage places in Christianity.
During the early years. Well, then we can see what the basilica actually looked like during that day. And as you say, that's quite large, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
But now we can see, as part of it's being reconstructed here and put back together, that it must have been a beautiful, beautiful church.
I think it's exciting to see that the interest that people are taking now in restoration of these old historical places, and for us that go to visit it, it's so awesome is a good word, inspiring.
Yeah, and it is nice that this is being done. Of course, when we go to the Holy Land, we see sites that have been there, for centuries, and that are, for the most part, I would say, in fairly good shape. Although some of it still needs some work on it. And it was nice to see that right out of Fresno, Corky Normart designed the new dome in over the site of the grave, Jesus' tomb, in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. But you know what that probably did? That probably let in so much light there that you could probably see what else needed to be redone.
Yeah, but I'm excited about it because when we'd go into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, it was really, really dark, and you wished you had a torch of some kind. So I think it's going to be marvelous now going back.
It should be. And here is, as you stated, the grave of St. John. That was where the little chapel was originally. But as we wander through the remains here of the basilica, and this is nice, we don't have any problems here because it's all open air, there's no roof on it, but we can still see some of the mosaics there that were used on the floor, and there was just a big area to see. Now, what was this, Betty?
That was the baptismal, the steps going down into the baptismal font there.
And that was all done in the shape of a cross.
Yeah, oh, God. There was so much significance in this. As Christians, it's just mind-blowing to go and see all of these places and have a fairly good knowledge, not a complete knowledge, of course, of the history of all of this, that as we read about it in our letters of St. John and whatever.
Yeah, and we want to do this again too. Now, here we go. Here's a floor plan as we look down on that, see what it looked like. But I say this was big, and it covered quite a big area. But we do want to go back to Turkey again and reacquaint ourselves again with what you have seen on a lot of the shows that we've had here in the past few weeks, almost past few months, because we've right, we've had a lot of them, and Betty will be telling you more about that as we make our plans to go to Turkey again. Well, Betty, let's continue to travel up the western coast of Turkey as we head toward Pergamon, and also Izmir. Tell us a little bit about Pergamon.
Well, you know, Marv, there's so much history to have to remember about these trips. And I have a little bit of it because Pergamon, with the exception, of course, of Ephesus, is considered the finest and most interesting ruined city in the whole of Turkey. Lots and lots of cultures have been there, ranging, started with the Bronze and then the Stone Ages, and then now up to ancient times and classical times. Pergamon had 160,000 people population and ranked as the capital, and subsequently with Ephesus and Smyrna as one of the 3 great cities of the province. Now,
well, that's great.
For history,
I think that's very good. Now we're looking way up there at the top of the old city of Pergamon. We're down here in the bottom. We're going to find out just a little bit more about this area from our guide Mehmet.
During the Ottoman period, later on with the foundation of our new republic, they wanted to migrate or move down to the mainland, and a lot of them were settled here in Pergamon, in Izmir, along the western coast. So, as a result of this mixture, they say they've got pretty girls over here, pretty handsome boys. Local museum, a tiny museum over there, between these pine trees, here now to your left. Every town, center, square, has a statue of our national leader, either standing or on horse, etc. Big one with the dome, an old building, Turkish bath. Open, it says, açık means open, you can come in. The soldiers, oh yeah, but today is Saturday and Sunday, they go out in shifts. It's their weekend. No
Valla
signal,
bodozlama
nothing
geliyorsun ha.
is used as a mosque. See? Temple worship, Christian belief, and Muslim belief, all combined into one, and this time on the very same site.
And this is just one of the buildings, of course, that we see as we're heading now on up the hill on these little cobblestone streets. This is really nice. And we're going to head to this. You know, from a distance, it didn't look like it was a huge thing up there. But once we get up here, and when you see it in our next episode, you're going to be really surprised, like Betty just said a few moments ago, that this was such a very, very important area. And it wasn't that far away from Ephesus.
It amazes me now to see the little narrow streets, and you're in this bus, and you keep thinking, oh my gosh, you know. But see, all the places are right on the street itself, and it just makes you want to say to the bus driver, hey, can't you pull over so we can walk around and see these places?
Well, you get your chance when we get on top of the hill to walk around quite a bit, I guarantee you.
But I mean, I'm into the little areas,
Yeah.
the little alley-like, and see how the people down here live. We saw how they used to live.
Well, we'll just have to go back again, Betty. In fact, if anybody's interested in any of the trips that we have coming up, please give Betty a call at 488-7443. It's time to say goodbye.
Bye-bye.